edition of Birds 365, joined now by Brandon Lee Gowton of Bleeding Green Nation. BLG, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, man?
How's it going, guys?
Good to see you, BLG. Let's start with the class of 2021. There are two left, coaching class of 2021. Robert Saleh out. Did that change BLG's vision of Nick Sirianni's coaching mortality at all?
I don't think so. No, because I still think that when you look at the Eagles, track record over a long time, especially under Jeffrey Lurie and with Chip Kelly being the exception here, and that being in what week?
One game.
Yeah, the penultimate week of the season leading up to that final game. I almost just can't believe there would be a coaching change unless it was so egregiously bad or until later in the year.
BLG, if they lose this game to the Browns, and I know I'm playing hypothetical right now, but here's why I think it's worth a thought, because expectations matter, right? We talk about them all the time, and sometimes they're too big. John talks about it all the time that, this team crumbled under expectations last year when they're 10-1 and like the most unhappy team in the world, right? I think the owner has big expectations. You're spending this type of money on offense. I think he's looking at this team right now like they got to get this on track. And why I say it's possible early, if he's doesn't have the thought, it's not going to happen. But if he's even considering it, wouldn't he do it early to try and salvage the season versus if they lose 3 of the next 4? It's like, shoot, the season's over. I mean, if you fall to 2-3, you're still right in the mix in the NFC. Would it be, did the damn door open with the Jets? And is it even possible that Lurie would think to do it with Nick?
I mean, my problem with that is then why did you bring him back at all? If these first, whatever, 4, 5 games, 6 games, were going to be the difference maker, that should not have been the determining factor, whether he should stay or not. If can they get out to a hot start? Got out to a hot start last year, 10-1, and they collapsed down the stretch. It's just that shouldn't be the determining factor to me. Although I will say, to your point, they do lose to this Browns team. That would be very bad. There's no really good reason the Eagles should lose to this team from the standpoint. They're 8.5 point, 9 point favorites, depending where you look. Yeah. The Browns are coming off this will be their 3rd straight road game. Teams in that spot, typically it's a really tough spot for them. Meanwhile, the Eagles are coming off their bye. Eagles are getting healthier. There's just no reason on paper why the Eagles should lose this game. That doesn't mean they can't lose the game, but there's no good reason why they should lose the game.
Boy, you're right. It would be ugly because of Deshaun Watson. I mean, everybody, no matter what Kevin Stefanski says, he doesn't want to play that guy, but he has to play that guy. Mm-hmm. It would be a catastrophic loss. I would go down that route, and I would still say if they do lose, Nick Sirianni's still not getting fired, BLG, because I have confidence that Jeffrey Lurie is a much more measured thinker than some other NFL owners. I just don't think he would go down that route. And my last question about the coaching is, who's next? Nobody ever thinks about who's next. You're going to elevate Kellen Moore?
They did interview him to be their head coach before they hired.
That's what Zander brought up. And I'm
Nick
like,
Sirianni.
That could be good and bad. Now, obviously, he's here. It probably wasn't bad, but I do think when people say so-and-so interviewed so-and-so, they automatically means they liked them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you interview somebody and go, well, that guy's not the answer. Yeah. Let's move on. So it can be in the negative portion, but it's more of his performance here. So you have it's Nick Sirianni crowd versus Kellen Moore is doing the game planning. If Kellen Moore is doing the game plan, and I'm 99.5% sure he's doing the game plan, I'll leave that little window open. They haven't scored in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. They've had, I believe, 12 yards on 13 plays or 13 yards on 12 plays in their first drives the entire season. It hadn't been good.
It's been a big problem.
It's got to get better, but right now, why would you want Kellen Moore being elevated to this?
Yeah, and it's dating back to last year too. It's the final 2 games from last season too. They also did not score in the first quarter, so I think Kellen Moore is part of the problem when we look at that. But I also think that, especially with more of the opening script, like the approach to opening the game, to me, in my kind of thought process about it, like that's something that the CEO, head coach should have a role in. Like, how are we conceptually going to go into this game and start the game and attack the opponent? Like, that seems like a big picture kind of concept there. Obviously, you have to nail the play calling within that. And the players take their own responsibility as well. But I think, we're going to use that term CEO, head coach. And that's also a time where he has to, if he isn't involved with that already, he has to then identify that as a big problem and kind of address that and figure out, okay, what are the answers at this problem point for us? So, I think Nick Sirianni has to ultimately be the one who helps find the solutions for that, even if Kellen Moore is part of the problem.
But I'm speaking post Nick Sirianni, so I'm trying to get to the core of why people are so confident in Kellen Moore. Now that Devin White is gone, I'm diving deep into this, Brandon, because it's so interesting to me. The guy's done nothing. The quarterback has regressed, if anything. Why is everybody so sure about Kellen Moore, who, by the way, this is his third job in 3 years? He's closer to being irrelevant in the NFL than being a head coach in the NFL. Yet, I think everybody would be fine if he was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. It's strange to me.
It's like the backup quarterback is the most popular player in the city, right? It's like that kind of thing where, everyone is so against the one guy that, by contrast, the guy behind him is by default much more better or offers more hope. I think if the Eagles did make a move, which I don't expect them to, at least anytime too soon, barring, if they get blown out by the Browns, okay, maybe we're talking about that. But barring something like that, I think it's not going to happen. But I do think Kellen Moore would be from the standpoint of, from what the Eagles have, which, there aren't a lot of options. I don't think they're going to give Vic Fangio that job. I don't even know if Vic Fangio wants that at this point in his career. I would think they would be interested in evaluating Kellen Moore in that capacity, while likely knowing they would, be having a head coach search that leads to them hiring someone else next year.
BLJ, this is highlighting a bigger look at this defense this year. DeJohn prepared me very well for Devin White being released. He told me all season, don't get my hopes up on the player. But now I'm looking at the full picture, BLJ, and we talk about the talent on this offensive side of the ball. It's arguably the most talented offense the Philadelphia Eagles have ever had in franchise history. And now I'm looking at the defensive side of the ball, which has been very underwhelming, and they're not plagued with injury, so I don't want to hear that excuse. I'm looking at 2 first-round draft picks that are completely underperforming, Jordan Davis and Nolan Smith. I'm looking at a $17 million edge rusher that's been a nothing burger in Bryce Huff. Nakobe Dean is meh. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is bottom of the league right now in touchdowns given up and missed tackles. Howie missed on every dart on defense right now. I mean, are we going to squander one of the best offenses we've ever had because Howie just didn't do one thing right on defense? At what point does he come into the crosshair?
I'm going to throw Zach Bond at you.
Zach Bond's a win, but I mean, shit.
I would say that's more of a Vic thing, though, in that case, just because, I know Howie signed him, but, I think Vic's role and vision for Zach Bond was, true. I mean, I give Howie some credit, but I think Vic Fangio deserves especially amount of credit in that one, where it seemed to me, I would argue, the Zach Bond signing was more of a Vic signing, whereas the Devin White signing was probably more of a Howie signing than a coaching staff kind of signing, because it's oh, this guy is a former number 5 pick, overall pick, athletic, all that. That seems to me like someone the front office wants to take a chance on, whereas the coaching staff is maybe not as convinced on that, and how he's been erratic and maybe not be able to trust him. And clearly, I think that kind of ultimately played out with Devin White. So he did re-sign Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham's looking good, so I guess there's that too. But no, and to the larger point, I think a lot of the failings here on defense, I mean, you can't just say it's the coordinator. I'm not saying the coordinator isn't part of the problem. It all goes together, but I mean, I just don't even know, that the Eagles really have the defensive personnel to be this great unit. And a lot of that stems from, and really to a bigger point, I mean, Saquon Barkley signing aside, which has been a home run and has, I think, been even way better than anyone really could have thought it to be. But that aside, Howie's offseason as a whole, just really not good enough.
Yeah, it doesn't look good in a snapshot. It is early, and I think from the Eagles' perspective, there's not a lot of panic because they played 3 games without A.J. Brown. We know this team's history. When that happens, it's not good. They should persevere better, but they can't. Lane Johnson, Devontae Smith added in Tampa. We know their history when Lane's not on the field. It's ugly. But Dan Orlovsky said something interesting to me, and I thought it was unfair to a certain extent. He said, nobody's progressing here, which I think it's fair to say a bunch of players are either regressing or disappointing in the fact that maybe the trajectory isn't as high as we expected. But there's still a bunch of guys who are progressing nicely. I would start with Reed Blankenship on defense. Quinyon Mitchell's been tremendous early. Cam Jurgens, Jordan Mailata just keeps getting better and better. The offensive line, Jeff Stoutland's a big part of that, obviously. But those guys keep getting better and better. You think that's unfair when people say nobody's progressing?
I remember that being a big talking point at the end of the Doug Peterson era. And a big reason, I think, kind of why the Eagles went with Nick Sirianni and a very young coaching staff at the time. I think the focus was like on player development and trying to get these guys better. So I don't know how much of that is cyclical. I don't know how much of that might just be like, if you make the wrong personnel moves, it's kind of hard for some players to get better if the players just can't really play at all. It's not, to me, it's not like a blank slate. Everyone has a blank slate and they can just get better no matter what. Sometimes players can play or they can't. And it's not, the coaching staff can try to do the most they can. And I think obviously you want to see examples of that throughout. But it can't just be about literally, making every player better. A lot of it falls on the player. A lot of times when players improve, it's not during the course of the season, it's in the off season. They take their training more seriously and dedicate themselves to improving. So there's a lot of different factors. I feel like that kind of go into that.
How about the quarterback, BLG? Has he regressed since he got his big contract?
I mean, the turnover thing is just, it's like not even interesting to talk about because it's just like very low hanging fruit and obvious, but it's true. It's like, you can't move beyond that.
Yeah, the quarterback's the most important player on every football team. That's how it goes.
That's why you pay him $250 million. And okay, the Eagles don't have A.J. Brown. They don't have Lane Johnson. They don't have Devontae Smith for the last game. Those are big things, but it can't just be as simple as especially if we're just talking about A.J. alone. Well, they have a chance with A.J. and they don't without him. That's not good enough. That's not.
That is. And I love A.J. Brown. I think he is the best pure football player on the Eagles. I've said it for a while. You got to be better. He's a wide receiver. There's, they are hampered. Every wide receiver in this league is hampered by the fact that they need a vehicle to get them the football. So their dominance is curbed to a certain degree, whereas obviously a quarterback handles it all. An edge rusher can wreck a game. Those guys, Lane Johnson makes more sense because you see Fred Johnson. Lane gives up no pressures in 91 snaps. Fred's given up like 16 and 70 something. It's unbelievable the difference. A wide receiver, you've seen Kansas City without Tyreek Hill. They keep chugging along. They're a little bit different. Even Minnesota without Justin Jefferson last year. All of a sudden, here's Jordan Addison. There's something. There's some punch. The Eagles, it's pathetic when AJ's not on the field. It's bizarre to me, BLG. Explain it to me.
Well, I was just going to say, the injury excuses are so lame for a team that won the Super Bowl, missing so many key players that year when they went to the
you, BLG.
Obviously, there's going to be some kind of drop off. No one is saying they need to be at the same level the whole time, and the player doesn't matter. AJ Brown, as you said, is fantastic. But it's just the excuse can't be to the point again to where it's just like they don't have a prayer. They should without AJ Brown, the Eagles should have less of a chance. Sure, that is the testament to him being good. They're not going to be as successful without him. It doesn't mean they have to be entirely hopeless. They don't have a shot, and it's been that extreme. It feels like here, and it's just not good enough. And getting back to Hurts, I mean, he leads the NFL in turnover-worthy plays with 11 so far this season. The turnover-worthy play percentage at 6.7, according to PFF. It's the highest in the league among quarterbacks with at least 100 dropbacks. Like, it's just too many. And like you ask, okay, how could the Eagles lose to this Browns team that, again, there's big favorites over? That's exactly it. If you turn the ball over, like that's exactly how you lose that kind of game.
Yeah. And those turnover-worthy plays are why his PFF grade is so poor. They played such and they should.
It should be poor. He's looked awful. I mean, anybody that's real, he has not looked good this year. And I have a problem with that. I understand when AJ Brown and Devontae Smith aren't out there, you're not going to be as good. BLJ, I thought you stated it perfectly. Yeah, they're great players. Your chances of winning are going to go down. But I mean, I watched this city cry and whine about Carson Wentz. The dude was throwing to Jalen Reagor and Travis Fogel. Jalen Hurts has better targets than we traded a 3rd-round pick for Jahan Dotson. I mean, he's not elevating anybody right now at the quarterback position. I think it's the biggest problem with this football team just because he's the quarterback. I mean, you can't get around that.
That's why you pay him, like, again, $250 million. Like, it's not, it can't just be like, well, it's everyone's fault. Yeah, it is, but guess what? Like, you're paying him with that much money, that much part of your salary cap, with the idea that he can make up, at least in theory, for some of these shortcomings.
Right.
Like, that's what these top quarterbacks need to do at some point. Maybe they can't do it over the course of an entire season, but like at the very least, you want them to do it for a couple games. And that has not been the case here. I don't think Hurts has played to that kind of level, and that's what they need from him.
So since we went on the Jalen tangent and we were talking about coaching, let's put it together. A lot of people bring up the excuse of the play callers and continuity and go back to his days at Alabama. You know the list, starting with Lane Kiffin, just about a different name every year. The one exception being Shane Steichen, and that's his best year. Yet you have this other group that always wants to fire the coordinators when things don't go well. So if you go back to the Doug Peterson era, it was Mike Rowe, it was Press Taylor, it was whomever. Now it's Brian Johnson, and you have no continuity. Now, Howie spoke about this, if you remember, in training camp, and he was like, hey, man, that's the NFL. You lose coaches if you're good, and you lose coaches if you're bad. So everybody goes through this kind of turnover. Is the only way to stop it to get a head coach who calls the plays?
I was just looking up. Yeah, like I forget this stat, but I remember seeing it earlier this offseason. You look at like the longest tenured offensive coordinator. I'm pretty sure it's like from 2022 at this point. Like these offensive coordinators are just not in those roles for very long. So yeah, I don't want to hear that as an excuse. Like that's just not the expectation that you can reasonably think that's going to happen. You're just going to have this offensive coordinator here who's going to be here forever, unless you, I guess, kind of get like lucky somehow and almost find like the Jim Schwartz or the Vic Fangio like version offensive coordinator.
You got to get Tom Moore. Can you get Tom Moore back? Maybe maybe.
Yeah. But that's such the exception. That's first of all, it doesn't happen. Second of all, if it did, it'd be such a rare exception. That can't be the expectation. Like that coaching stability is just going to exist. That's not the name of the game. So yeah, that part of it has never interested me in terms of like figuring out like, or last year I talked about like the Eagles should have lamenting the Shane Steichen loss. Like they couldn't have kept him. I don't know what people really want to happen. Like it's just. It's unfortunate from the standpoint of, in a perfect world, you'd like to be able to keep them, but you can't. That's the name of the game, and you have to then figure out how to work around that.
BLG, the Eagles got the Browns this week. It's when you look at it from the outside, it's like this is a get-right game, right? I mean, you look at it and you're like, shit, this team is the only offense in the NFL that hasn't had a 300-yard game. Deshaun Watson looks like a bottom 5 quarterback, let alone a $53 million fully guaranteed quarterback. Here's where I'm wondering on it now, though. Will the pressure creep into the locker room? Because if you think about it, it's not just one of those games where it's a win or lose and move on to the next one. The sky's already fallen a little bit. If you lose to the Browns, the sky's really going to fall. I wonder if that's going to have any impact on inside the locker room, where it's like any given Sunday you can lose. But if we lose to this team, it's going to be that bad. Will that creep in and affect this team in the way they prepare?
Yeah, with Deshaun Watson, I mean, like, I think it's gotten to a point where, like, he might be a better person than a player. Like, that's how bad he's been as a player. Like, but it's true because he's
all
been,
right. Clip that. I love that.
That's how bad he's been. Like, he's been horrendous out there. Like, he's unplayable, historically so. Should not be playing at all. Like John said, I don't think Stefanski wants to play him. I don't think the coaching staff wants to, but they have to. I think I've never been a big Jameis Winston guy, but I find it hard to believe that he can't be better than what Deshaun Watson looks like right now. So, yeah, this team, like, they shouldn't have much of a chance with how bad a quarterback looks like on that side of the ball. For them, obviously, their defense is a little bit better. They have a coach over there who kind of knows what he's doing with that unit. But, yeah, so to the Eagles' point of this, I mean, like, there hasn't been more of like a get right opportunity for them in a bit here. That, again, everything on paper going into this matchup is working in their favor. That does not mean it will happen, but like, this is the time. This is the situation. If there was going to be a game where for the first time in basically almost an entire year, the Eagles haven't won by multiple scores, more than 8 points, multiple possessions since the Dolphins game in October last year, the Kelly Green debut game. Like, this should be the game. It's literally the expectation almost by the betting line. So, pressure, whatever, like, this, it doesn't matter. Like, they have every reason they should win this game, and if they don't, it's a big problem.
By the way, Mike Gill told me this, PLG, and I don't know if you delved into Cleveland yet, but they are third in the league in blitz percentage with Jim Schwartz. It's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. What the hell is going on? He's like the pod guy. He's like Donald Sutherland. Third in the league in blitz percentage. That I don't know what's going on in Cleveland, but if they can't beat this team, boy, yeah, it could get ugly pretty quickly. Now, I'm going to turn this positive. They're going to be fine. The next 4 games are, yeah, again, this is not college football where you have gimmies on your schedule. This is the NFL, but they're in good position. Getting back AJ Brown, getting back Lane Johnson, getting back Devontae Smith. I think they are going to score 30 points a game, and people are going to breathe a sigh of relief. I don't know what it means long term. If they're a real contender versus just beating up on some lesser competition. But I think things are going to be fine. Where are you with this team coming out of the bye?
My problem with that is just, we thought like they would, pick up some of those wins at the end of last season, after that tough gauntlet stretch. It looked like, okay, they should be able to beat the Giants, and they did, although, not as easily as they probably should have.
Well, they did lose one, didn't they? To Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets.
Yeah, well, AJ got hurt.
And they weren't like, fully going all out. They did play the starters, but the game didn't matter. So they waved the light flag at halftime. Although if it did matter, they still could have lost that. Yeah. And then
probably would have, let's be real.
Yeah. They lost to the Cardinals, obviously, as well, as we all remember. So I have a tough time just saying like the schedule is easy. They can definitely do it. But I think, John, you're correct to like frame it in this next 4-game window here. Like, it is a real opportunity to, let's just say, like, if you go 3-1, not even a perfect 4-0, 3-1, you get to 5-3, going into that Cowboys game in Dallas, a really big one. And if you beat them, like, hey, you're 6-3, you're feeling good. You're feeling like, okay, this season could be on track. We have hope here for the second half. And if anything short of that, then I think it's going kind of a rough way here. But yeah, it is a big opportunity here. I do think the Bengals in this stretch are like that Bengals team is better than a 1-4.
Oh yeah,
way better. Yeah,
I agree.
And that game's in Cincy too. I think that's going to be a tough game for them. But
shows you why you need a good defense, though. BLG Joe Burrow threw for 5 touchdowns last week and lost the game.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, I said 3-1. So let's say that's the one loss. Let's say you beat the Giants here. You beat the Browns this weekend. Who else do they have in this stretch here?
Jacksonville.
You beat the Jags. Like, I think that's within reach. Sure.
And by the way, I think November 14th, short week, I am concerned about Jaden Daniels. I think Washington is going to be a problem. I don't think people know what to do with him defensively from a defensive perspective. I think the Commanders are the biggest threat in the NFC East. Agree or disagree?
Big time agree. Jaden Daniels just does not look like a rookie to me. And I felt that way even watching that game they had against the Giants where I don't even think they scored a touchdown, or maybe it was the Giants who didn't. In any case, no, it was them. Yeah, they didn't score a touchdown, I don't think, the Commanders. But he just looks so poised, and we've really seen that carry over. Now, you look at some of like the metrics on him and that Washington offense as a whole. They've been so good that it's hard to like really believe they're going to be that level good.
They've been what people expect the Eagles offense to be over the last. Over the last.
Daniels delivering the ball from the pocket on time and on target makes a big difference for an offense.
It's a big deal. So I think they're not going to be quite this good, but I do think they're a real problem for the Eagles and really every team in the NFC East and the NFC as a whole right now.
BLG, before I let you go, appreciate you being here today. This is a great super chat. To your point, BLG. To BLG's point, Massage Watson has settled more lawsuits than he has touchdowns for the Browns. This is a real stat.
That's true. That's true. 23-19, I believe.
And that's not obviously. No one is saying he's a great person.
No.
That's not.
That's a great line. Don't back off it. That is a great line. Do not shy away from it, BLG. Own it. Tremendous. Got a great laugh. I love it. Great line.
BLG, thanks, man. Appreciate you being here, brother. See ya.
Thanks, bud.
Good stuff from BLG, John. Great stuff. BLG.
That's a great line. I don't care.
That was a great line.
Get a sense of humor if you're upset by that.
Yeah, come on. No, I don't think anybody's upset by it though. John, I do got to run through a couple super chats. We got about 6 or 7 minutes left on the show. Before I get to the super chats, just your final thoughts on the day here, John. Mike Gill brought some great insight. BLG brought some great insight. Browns coming up. Devin White released. Your final thoughts on this Wednesday as we prep to get back to practice.
Devin White's a non-story, wasn't involved. I think the story is that people thought he was going to be involved, which I don't understand. The perception did not match the reality. Now the reality. I would say turn the page. That's where it is. He wasn't going to play even if somebody got hurt. So it would have been Ben or Jeremiah Trotter Jr. In game, it might have been Oren Burks because he's got that experience. But yeah, very weird situation to me. And then Browns. I mean, everything's set up for you. I mean, one of the things I do think, the Eagles are focused on, one game at a time. That's how you have to handle the NFL. They're not thinking about 4 weeks down the road or 5 weeks down the road or 6 weeks down the road. So it's a good chance to get a little bit healthy and change the narrative against a team. You think the Eagles are struggling? Look at the Cleveland Browns. I think somebody called it the worst situation in sports, and I can't disagree with them because they don't want to play the quarterback and they have to. And that's a bad situation to be in.
John Stroll threw a couple super chats. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. Got a great crowd in here on Birds 365. You guys have been showing out, so we appreciate you. I told you guys yesterday we've had the biggest numbers on Birds 365 ever. So I can't thank you all enough for the support. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you're enjoying the show. Let's get to James Carver. James with a big super chat. James, appreciate it, brother. He says, how can people continue to trash on Jordan Davis and overlook Jalen Carter when both are having to overcome constant doubles and 4 or 5 man fronts because the edges, especially Huff as a 1, makes it so both doubled because a single tight end is making a D-line a 3 or 4 respectively. That's a good point, John.
Well, I think I don't think anybody's trashing Jalen Carter, other than the obvious stuff, the consistency, the the ability to play at the same level each and every week. I don't think he's there maturity wise. Other than that, I mean, the upside to Jalen Carter remains obvious, I think, to most people. With Jordan Davis, James and I have talked about that a lot back and forth. I mean, people don't understand his role. But that being said, he hasn't played as well as he typically does this season. And I think it's fair to say it's been a bit of a disappointment for Jordan Davis, more so than Jalen Carter.
Get to our next super chat. Good answer there, James. Hopefully that was a good
even
answer.
with the context of they have different roles.
Yeah,
which is what
I agree. I do think, to James's point, though, if these edge rushers were a little bit better, maybe it would change a lot of the perspective on the defensive line. Caleb checks in. This was a follow-up to his earlier super chats, but we were in the commercial break, I think, when he sent this. John, being committed to the run means if you have 5 carries for 9 yards, you still got to run. It's a commitment, not 2 bad plays and done with the best O-line running back in football. I think that's a fair point.
That's easy to say. And this, I don't, if you're down 21-0 and you're committed to the run, I guarantee most fans are screaming at the TV. What are you doing? Especially if you get 5 carries to 9 yards.
Yeah,
so it's a complimentary game.
You're right about that.
And if you're down 21-0 in the modern NFL, and by the way, again, it's not 1985. It's a different game. I don't like the game necessarily from an aesthetic standpoint. It's played differently. But if you're down 21-0 and you go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and you have the patience to run the ball like that, Godspeed to you. But vast majority of people don't. And if you do that, you're probably going to lose the game. Whereas if you go about it like Green Bay a couple weeks ago when they were down 4 touchdowns, you get back in the game. Even at 28-0, you still have an opportunity to get back in a game. If you're down 28-0 and you're trying to prove a point and stay disciplined, you're not going to get back in that football game. Period. End of sentence.
Yeah, I hear you. I do think. I mean, look, it's a long game. Eagles did bounce back. I mean, here's Caleb who just follows up with you because you're answering his super chat. Appreciate it, Caleb. By the way, man, I talked to Caleb on the post game show after the Bucks game, so it was good to put a face to a name with Caleb. He says, "Yes, you down 21 because you don't run 3 and out." He is right. I mean, John, we were down 3 and 1.
Well, it's a complimentary. You're also down because the defense can't stop any. It's a complimentary game. It's special teams. I bring up they took a false start on special teams when they're getting ready to punt the football. It's a complimentary game. The defense didn't perform. The offense didn't perform. But let's be honest. If you go 3 and out 3 consecutive times, yeah, the offense is going to be the headline in that complimentary default of ineptitude. I mean, 3 and outs to start a game, and Kellen Moore took took responsibility for it, as he should. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. And in that grouping of plays, you had an opportunity to make play running the ball. You had an opportunity to make play passing the ball. They didn't make any plays. So everybody is on the hook from Kellen Moore to the quarterback on down.
Let's get one more super chat from my main man, Jason 18, one of our legend members. Jason, appreciate it, brother. He says, what do you think will happen if we get embarrassed by the Browns this week? I'm not too high on us winning because how Washington beat them down. They did beat them down pretty good. I think it was like 34-13 or somewhere.
Yeah, it was 34-6. It wasn't even that close. But I don't understand. He's not confident because of how Washington beat them down.
Washington's better, clearly. Well, I will say this too. The Washington team worked them, but Jim Schwartz did somewhat manage Jaden Daniels.
He actually slowed him down more.
Slowed down a little bit, right?
Week. Yeah.
Will he have the book out?
No, I think he means that. Yeah, and this was what I mentioned. Going into the New Orleans week when it was the opposite, and they're kind of, it's tough to handle success. everybody's telling them how great they are, scoring 45 points a game.
Yeah. Well, there's his follow-up, John, Jason's. TB was blown out week before us, and then we got killed. I think that's what. Yep. So you're right. That's what he was going for.
So yeah, I get it to a standpoint, but again, their quarterback situation is so bad, and you got to take advantage of it if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's been a long sample. It's been a large sample size now with Deshaun Watson. Just doesn't have it coming off. And his Pro Bowls were legitimate. We talked about that with Devin White. Deshaun Watson was one of the best quarterbacks in football before all his legal issues. He is not the same guy. He sat out a year and then 11 games. That is a long time. And he has not been the same guy since that long layoff.
John, in Philadelphia Eagles, I'm sure you got to run because you're going down to the NovaCare complex. I'll let you get out of here. In Philadelphia Eagles fashion, will Deshaun Watson return to 2020 form this weekend?
He doesn't have that form, but you know, it's gone. It's gone.
It's gone. I'm worried Jalen's 22 form is gone, John.
Could be. But he's as poorly as Jalen has played at times. He's not played Deshaun Watson poorly.
No, not even close. Yeah, got to be real.
Yeah. So
yeah, Deshaun Watson's been bad. No doubt. Great show today, Johnny Mac. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Appreciate all of our super chats. Caleb, thank you for your support today. James Carver, thank you for your support. Brian Fleming, Jason A-Team, Fleming again. So Brian Garner and James Carver, you guys are the best, man. Appreciate all the super chats. They go a long way in helping us, and all the people in the chat that didn't super or are not members. We appreciate you as well. John Nag, one more, John, real quick before I let you go. If Philly doesn't win decisively this week and blow out a Cleveland team that has clearly quit because of quarterback,
yeah, they don't have to blow them out. Don't get too up.
There are huge problems with this team.
They got to win the game.
That's what I said yesterday. You got to win the game. I'm not worried about the damn spread. Yeah. Win the game. Get back in the win column.
Yeah, I'm not worried about blowout. It's the NFL. Don't get caught up in blowout this, blowout that. Hopefully you play well. Hopefully they do blow them out, but get a win. Get a win.
No doubt. John, thank you for the super chat, man. Appreciate that. Johnny Mac, great show today. Everybody, as I mentioned already, thank you guys. Hit that like button on your way out. It really goes a long way in helping continue to grow the show. John, our biggest year ever so far on Birds 365. September was our biggest month ever on Birds 365. Go back to last year. We had all these shows, all these, a whole different looking network. We had our biggest month in September. So I can't thank everybody enough for the support of the channel. Johnny Mac, great show, man. I'll catch you tomorrow on Thursday's edition of Birds 365 with hopefully some intel you get today from being down at NovaCare.
Yeah, big day today. Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, practice. So we'll have some stuff tomorrow.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Talk to you tomorrow, man. Thanks, everybody in the chat. Hit that like button on your way out. Catch you tomorrow, everyone.